Week 1, PDL Season 9. Here we go, a new adventure, and I'm still getting my head around this one. I'm really not used to playing with Dynamax and without Terastal. Plus, it's a whole other set of Pokemon. So, this might be a relatively quick team breakdown. I know I've said that before, and they've just been trending longer over time, but I'm kind of just feeling things out at this point, and also, I didn't have a ton of time to build this week, so a little bit throwing together a few of the things that my team can do, and we'll see how they turn out. First, of course, let's go to the standings. These are the standings going into week 1. Mind-blowing stuff for sure, but of course anything can happen still from here. Now let's look at this week's matchup. We're taking on the Windsor Whiscash, and as I mentioned in the draft breakdown, this team is not one of the ones that have a single specific mode that scare me a lot, although there certainly are some powerful synergies here, like Sableye can run support in various ways, most notably screens, but also things like Quash for something like a bulky Nasty Plot, Galarian Moltres. That looks pretty scary. I could see the other water types running Surf to boost the Gastrodon, or even Grapploct doing something. I was looking at Grapploct a little bit while I was building. It actually has a crazy move pool. I guess because it's also, well, I was going to say a squid. I think it's an octopus, but it's somewhat like my friend Malamar. It does have moves like Topsy-Turvy, Octazooka. I think it has Soak. And then some physical threats in Blaziken and Toxicroak that can complement the Moltres. Fire, Water, Grass with Blaziken, Lurantis, and pick your water type. And then Pikachu is actually not bad in this format, probably. Not only does it get Fake Out, not only does it get reasonable speed and boosted offense with Light Ball, but of course it also can Gigantamax and use Gmax Volt Crash to paralyze my Pokemon. All of that said, what actually worries me about this team is that it's a weirdly scary, specifically into my team. This is a weirdly tricky matchup for me specifically to build for, in a way that I think most other coaches they face will not have so many problems with. So in a way, maybe it's good that we're dealing with this matchup right away and seeing how I adjust. Because of course, two of my strongest pieces are Regieleki, my S+ tier Pokemon, and my first round pick, Gigantamax Blastoise, and my opponent has a weird number of ways to shut them down. Regieleki hits extremely hard in Generation 8 with electric-type attacks. This is pre-nerf Transistor we're dealing with here, but it doesn't have a whole lot of coverage outside of those, and those electric-type attacks are redirected and nullified by Pikachu if my opponent brings it to this matchup, which I think they probably will, especially since they were just asking in the Discord earlier today about whether the Pikachu hat forms are legal. And then Blastoise, of course, wants to throw off water-type attacks, especially if I Gigantamax it and go for Gmax Cannonade, but Gastrodon Storm Drain works just like Pikachu Lightning Rod. Redirect, nullify, and get a boost. Plus, Toxicroak also gets an ability that makes it immune to water, although that one at least doesn't redirect water-type attacks. So, I kind of have to try to find some other ways through this team. And I think one way I could have approached this was just bringing all my strongest offensive pieces and figuring it out at Team Preview. But instead, I was still looking for something in particular that I thought could put in work here, and with Regieleki and Blastoise both having relatively hard counters in front of them in this specific matchup, I decided to see what I can do with Quiver Dance Volcarona. So that is the first Pokemon this week. The Volcarona is here with Quiver Dance, Heat Wave, probably Giga Drain, and Protect. I am reconsidering Giga Drain because if I run Psychic, that has perfect neutral coverage into my opponent's team with Heat Wave. Let me just fact check myself on that. Yep, that is correct. I lose the super effective damage into their 3 water types, but I would have perfect neutral coverage with Psychic, and as it is, I don't have that with I don't have that into Blaziken with the Volcarona. So I think Psychic might be worthwhile just for that, especially since I've seeded some other grass type attacks into my team. But on the other hand, since this is a bulky, all bulk invested, no offense invested Volcarona, and I have gone almost full physical defense to help it take hits from Blaziken, which is a threat otherwise since it can boost speed alongside Volcarona and get some rock attacks, gets Brave Bird and stuff, plus the Flare Blitz just hits hard. I think that Volcarona might benefit quite a lot from the recovery from Giga Drain, so that's the main thing. I think if I can click Giga Drain into a Gastrodon or a Whiscash, that can help Volcarona survive a lot longer, and that's why I'm choosing it over Psychic for now, but honestly, I am still turning it over into my head. We're not playing until tomorrow. There is a chance that I'll wake up and decide that actually Psychic is better here. So that dilemma is almost but not quite resolved. Charting Berry for the item. This, of course, helps it take a rock-type attack one time. Double weaknesses are tricky to work with in Draft League because your opponent can aggressively target them. And I found last season that when I had Gastrodon, that running the Rindo Berry on it was kind of just generally the best item by default, unless I had a specific need for a different one. So that's my starting thought here with Volcarona. That doesn't mean I'll run Charting Berry every single week, but it is the default item in my head right now. We'll see how that holds up. That said, even with Giga Drain giving it some recovery, Volcarona is not going to set up and sweep very effectively without strong support pieces in place. And so let's take a look at those supports right now. It starts with Tangela, giving me a bit of redirection. I said that Tangela is kind of a low-budget Amoonguss, and here it is with the Rage Powder and the Sleep Powder. Sleep Powder not hitting as reliably as Spore, but still hitting most of the time. And then with Giga Drain, I have a way for Tangela to threaten Whiscash, Gastrodon, even Barraskewda if they try to ruin Volcarona's day, which again is all the more reason that I am thinking about changing Giga Drain on Volcarona to Psychic. That recovery is the only reason I'm hesitating, but I've said that like 3 times now. Tangela is pretty straightforward. It's got Regenerator. It's actually very bulky in this matchup with the Eviolite. My opponent doesn't have a ton of immediate offensive threats, and these EVs here, can I remember specifically what I calced into? I think Blaziken Flare Blitz. I don't know if I calced into Blaziken Flare Blitz, actually. That's just a hard one to take, but certainly Toxicroak Gunk Shot. And +1 Gastrodon Ice Beam is something I calced for as well, because I could see them running self Storm Drain setup to try to get Gastrodon going. But basically, with this spread, Tangela takes all of the major hits that I checked for, except maybe Blaziken Flare Blitz. I can't remember whether it takes that or not. Hopefully, we won't have to find out. And by throwing the last few EVs into special attack, it gets a marginally better chance to one-shot the Gastrodon and does like a bit more damage into the other water types. So I decided that was worthwhile once I'd covered all the hits I wanted to calc for. And then 4 EVs in speed just because they're wasted otherwise. If at level 50, you're just wasting EVs if you don't invest in an odd number of stats. So I had those left over. I'm not using the attack stat. Speed it is. I actually was originally just going to go ahead and waste those EVs. I had Knockoff in the first draft of this set, which I think could be fun, but I'd probably rather have Protect. Again, I don't really have my head around playing with Dynamax yet. I had Knockoff in the last slot. But I do want to at least to start this season with Protect on a lot of my Pokemon, because stalling out those 3 Dynamax turns can be very important. A lot of my speed control techs are built around, aren't really properly accounting for things like Gmax Volt Crash and Max Airstream from my opponent, because I just don't have a good read on how they're going to use Dynamax. And so I could get into some weird positions. I think it's valuable to be able to protect through them to an extent. So no Knockoff on Tangela. I didn't really have a specific use for it. It just seemed neat. And that means no attack EVs, just 4 in speed because they're not being used otherwise. And like I said, this is calc to survive a bunch of notable hits, and once I hit those thresholds, I found that 68 special attack EVs made a difference to the chance of one-shotting Gastrodon with Giga Drain. That said, Volcarona will certainly benefit from redirection, but I think it could use some other support as well, and so that's why I brought Regieleki to this one. I am not planning to rely too hard on Regieleki as an attacker, because again, I think my opponent will bring the Pikachu, and Pikachu makes Regieleki's life very difficult. That said, actually it was kind of hard to choose 4 moves on Regieleki here. Even as I'm looking over it now, I'm thinking Protect could be valuable for the reasons I talked about already. Also, Hyper Beam could be valuable, so I have the option of clicking Max Strike into Pikachu if I can get rid of it with that, and then otherwise do a lot of damage to the rest of the team with Dynamax to Regieleki. That said, I don't think Dynamax to Regieleki is that valuable here because they do also have 2 ground types. So I'm looking for more of a support role for Regieleki. I'm running Reflect and Light Screen with the Light Clay. Reflect actually makes a pretty significant difference to Volcarona taking some hits, even with all of the bulk that I have invested in Volcarona already. And Regieleki doesn't need, because my opponent's team is not very fast, Regieleki doesn't need any speed investment to outspeed at least most of what they have. I think I checked some speed-boosted Blaziken numbers. I think this outspeeds +1 Blaziken, but not +2, but I couldn't outspeed +2 anyway if they went max with it, so I decided no speed EVs needed this time. If I do get a chance to click Thunderbolt into something and it's not Pikachu or Gastrodon or Whiscash, it's going to hurt. And then I also have the Volt Switch to pivot Regieleki out, get somebody like Tangela in, or get another attacker in to do some damage, because I am not strictly relying on Volcarona to do my damage here. We've covered Volcarona, and we've covered 2 supports for Volcarona. I do want to try to set up the Quiverdance Volcarona if I can, with Tangela redirecting and Regieleki setting screens, but I know I need more damage than that, and for this week that starts with something that I teased, I think quite a bit in the draft recap, and that is Choice Band 10% Zygarde. I can pretty much just click 1,000 Arrows into my opponent's team. I don't think they have Wide Guard, unless I missed it on anything. They don't have... I'm not sure they have any ground resist except Lurantis. Hang on. Yeah, Lurantis is the only one. A few of their notable Pokemon, like Pikachu, Blaziken, and Toxicroak, are weak to ground. And of course, 1,000 Arrows specifically hits flying types for neutral damage, so even Galarian Moltres can't just sit there in front of that. So Zygarde's running the Choice Band for maximum damage. I want to just be clicking 1,000 Arrows most of the time. It really is that simple. I thought about just not bringing 3 more moves, but obviously that's not optimal. I actually also thought about bringing 1,000 Waves so that I can make it harder for my opponent to pivot things like Pikachu and Gastrodon in to shut down some of my other threats. In the end, though, 1,000 Arrows is, I think, almost certainly the only move I'll click with this Pokemon, but for other options, I have Outrage to do big, single-target, non-ground type damage, although I don't have control over it. Although if I Dynamax Zygarde, then I get access to max moves, and when a Pokemon with a choice item Dynamaxes, the choice item is turned off, so you are not choice locked while you are Dynamaxed. Moltres, of course, would be immune to Max Quake because it's not 1,000 Arrows, it's Max Quake, but then I'd be able to click whatever the dragon one is called, Max Wormwind, I think, into Moltres. So it's good to have that option. Breaking Swipe, if for some reason I want to help Volcarona set up by patching up its defense stat yet more into something like Blaziken or Toxicroak, I have that option. Although it's hard to imagine I don't just click 1,000 Arrows into Blaziken and Toxicroak. Honestly, I'm talking myself out of Breaking Swipe on the spot right now. Maybe I will change it to 1,000 Waves before the battle, but I don't think it makes a huge difference. And then Glare, because maybe there's some niche edge case position where I can win the game with another Pokemon if I can just make it go before one of the opponent's Pokemon. Right, where the best thing Zygarde can do with its speed is patch up a teammate's lower speed. I can't think of what that position would be, but might as well throw it in there. And also, again, if I Dynamax it, I'm not choice locked, and it gives me access to Max Guard, which, again, who knows? Maybe there's some weird niche situation where that comes up. I am going to think about changing Breaking Swipe to 1,000 Waves, but I think this set, like I said, almost certainly just comes in and clicks 1,000 Arrows anyway. The EVs make it faster than Pikachu and Moltres, which are tied for my opponent's second fastest Pokemon. Barraskewda is faster than Zygarde, there's not much to be done about that. But Barraskewda doesn't take hits very well, so I better hope it one-shots or something. Doesn't run into Regieleki. But yeah, Moltres and Pikachu was the benchmark here, and then max attack and just the rest in whatever. Up next, what do we have? Oh yeah, a Pokemon that I'm not quite sure about that I definitely think I might trade away before the season is over, so let's get an early look at how it performs. That's one reason that I'm bringing Linoone this week. The other reason is that Pokemon like Volcarona, Regieleki, and my 6th Pokemon here will thrive somewhat better if I can remove Gastrodon in particular, maybe Whiscash to an extent, certainly for Regieleki. And I think Linoone is... I'm not exactly sure of my opponent's experience level. I think Linoone is a solid example of a Pokemon that gets grass coverage from which they might not be expecting grass coverage. So I do want to see what Belly Drum Extreme Speed Linoone can do here. In theory, it can also benefit from Tangela Redirection. A lot of my opponent's team is not super bulky, so Linoone's attack stat is not great, but with max attack, those extreme speeds should hurt, and if they don't, then maybe I want to trade Linoone away. But I also would like to click Seed Bomb into Gastrodon if I get the chance. All the more reason to think about Psychic on Volcarona, but I'll stop harping on that. I didn't really put any significant effort into this EV spread. It's max attack and then the rest into bulk. I will say one thing. I'm once again glad that I do these team breakdowns before the battles because I had the wrong ability on Linoone and I caught that when I was making this image. Otherwise, I would have brought Pickup Linoone to the set. And, of course, Gluttony is necessary because it means that if you Belly Drum from full HP, you eat your Figgy Berry at 50% instead of the usual 33%. You get that extra recovery compared to a Citrus Berry. That's all there is to say about Linoone. Pretty straightforward, as is fitting of this Pokemon's overall character. And finally, I have not benched the first round pick for week 1. I am bringing Blastoise. I was a little bit iffy on bringing Blastoise because of the 2 water immunities, one of them specifically Storm Drain on the other side. And I do think this set is a little bit of a mess. I'm not sure it's really the most valuable, but I didn't have anything else that I especially wanted to bring more than this. It does give some fake-out support to Pokemon like Volcarona, Linoon, and Zygarde. I can use Yawn to disrupt an opponent's Dynamax, right? Dynamax ends when you switch out, and it also ends after 3 turns if you don't switch out, so Yawn is a good way to get past an opponent's Dynamax Pokemon as they're forced to either throw their own Dynamax away or potentially sleep through it. Very powerful move in Sword and Shield for that reason, and given that I'm not used to playing with Dynamax anymore, I haven't done it in a long time, and I don't really have a good read on what I think my opponent will do with it, I think Yawn could be valuable, so Blastoise kind of feels worthwhile just for that reason, for being a bulky Pokemon with Yawn. I do also like the fake-out support for Volcarona and for maybe Linoon. And then I'm running Muddy Water. I wanted a water attack for sure, because I am bringing Blastoise with the Gigantamax factor. I don't really see any reason not to. I'm probably not actually using G-Max Blastoise in this set, but I do have the option available if for some reason I think it's worthwhile. So I definitely wanted a water type attack, and I chose Muddy Water. It's partly just good spread damage, right? But also because Muddy Water is not completely shut down by Storm Drain. Gastrodon will take no damage from it and will get boosted, but I still do damage into the partner, so maybe that's worthwhile in some position. I think a Citrus Berry might be the best item on this Blastoise, but I've gone with a weakness policy. I don't really have any specific plan. And unfortunately, I did calc my own Regielecki's Volt Switch into Gigantamaxed Blastoise, and it does like half. So maybe there's some position for that, but probably not. Maybe in future weeks I can calc some, perfect Regielecki EV spread that does the damage that I want into opponents, but not too much into my own Blastoise. But I don't have time to do that this week. So weakness policy is just here in case they Thunderbolt my Blastoise or something, and I get to reap the benefit of that, but I don't really have a specific plan for it. But this is Sword and Shield. Weakness policy is way better in this generation than it is in Scarlet and Violet. And so that's the team. I guess that wasn't a super short one, but it is, like I said, a little bit of a, not so much a clear plan as just feeling things out. That said, I do want to try to set up the Volcarona. I have Tangela and Regielecki to try to enable that. And then I also have physical offense from the Choice Band Zygarde, which I think is pretty hard for my opponent to deal with. And the Belly Drum Linoon, which, I don't know, we'll see. Nothing else to say from here except, well, I'll be playing the battle tomorrow. But for you, we can just cut right to the battles and see how they turn out. All right, we're here. Week 1. I have not made any changes to my team. I'm a little nervous. I always am at the very beginning. I always am until I have a win. It's working. It's playing weirdly for me. I think we're fine. My throat's a little tired because I was just talking into the mic quite a bit for another project that probably is either already up on the channel by now or quietly scrapped behind the scenes. We'll find out which one together. Grapploct, Lurantis, Moltres, Gastrodon, Pikachu, and Blaziken. So as expected, Pikachu and Gastrodon are both here, plus probably their biggest offensive threat, Blaziken. Blaziken is definitely the biggest threat to Volcarona. Gastrodon is a threat as well, but Quiver Dance does a lot to help Volcarona deal with it. I like Volcarona into Grapploct and Lurantis, which is part of the reason I brought it. Also it sets up nicely on Moltres. So I think when I keep it simple game 1, I'm going to do Volcarona. I could do Alecki or I could do Tangela. I think I want Volcarona, Zygarde, Tangela, Alecki. I'm just thinking about the order. Let's do Tangela lead. I think Redirection is more immediately valuable when I don't really know what I'm getting, although they're actually starting off with these two. There's no obvious immediate threat into Volcarona. I think Grapploct does get some water coverage. Lurantis is immune to Rage Powder, but I don't really know what it threatens into Volcarona. I'm going to go for Quiver Dance here. I am just going to Rage Powder, possibly redirect something from the Grapploct. We'll see what we get. There we go, though. Volcarona and Tangela, first 2 Pokemon to hit the field for the Toronto Rock Slide this season. What, the 3rd and 5th round picks? I'm sure Blastoise will get its due, but I don't know if I actually bring it to a game in this matchup. Octolock, okay. And they went for Leaf Storm into Volcarona, but that doesn't do much, of course. Yeah, I definitely prefer that Tangela is Octolocked instead of Grapplocked. I don't really see any reason I can't just Quiver Dance and Rage Powder again here. I might want to start attacking after that. I assume it's contrary Lurantis, so they get a special attack boost if they... Oh, okay. They get a special attack boost if they land that Leaf Storm into Volcarona. It's a little unfortunate for them that they miss. Octolock and Circle Throw is an interesting combination. They trap Tangela and then force it out, but they do get the lowered defense into the Circle Throw at least. I wouldn't mind Volt Switching Tangela back in, but they probably have Pikachu in the back, which will stop the Volt Switch and get a boost. So I think I'm just going to go Heat Wave and Reflect here. Reflect because Blaziken is the Pokemon I'm most afraid of, potentially in the back. Also, Grapploct might get a chance. Oh, Grapploct can go for a Circle Throw into Volcarona now, actually. Yeah. They do get rid of my boost. They don't get burned by the Flame Body, and Tangela is dragged out, so I'm in a little bit of a passive position now. Moltres is here. They didn't bring in Pikachu. Interesting question then whether they're trying to bait me or not, but I'm just going to play this a little bit slowly. I'm going to go for Sleep Powder into Moltres and go for... Okay, they didn't bring Pikachu to this game. Go for Light Screen. We do put Gastrodon to sleep. Regieleki gets Octolocked, but now I know that I can click Thunderbolt and Volt Switch here. In fact, I can click Thunderbolt into this slot pretty much for free because their only electric immunity that they brought to this game is already on the field in the other slot. I'm going to click Giga Drain into the Gastrodon and Thunderbolt into Grapploct. Neither one of us is Dynamaxed yet. Grapploct protects here. They let me have Giga Drain into their Gastrodon. It doesn't have a Rindo Berry. It's just knocked out now. They're down to Moltres and Grapploct. They could have Sucker Punch on Moltres. I'm just going to go for... I'm not really that afraid of the Grapploct at this point. I'm going to go for another Sleep Powder into Moltres. And I could even think about Dynamaxing Regieleki here. But I think I'm just going to Volt Switch into Grapploct first. Look to pivot my Zygarde in. Volt Switch almost KOs, but not quite. Maybe I didn't need to show Zygarde, but... Anyway, Moltres takes a nap. Choice Banded... Oh, it has Surf. It's meant to boost the Gastrodon, I guess, but I knocked Gastrodon out too quickly. Choice Banded 1,000 Arrows will now hit both of their Pokemon. I'll switch Regieleki back in. This will knock out Grapploct, and then I can max Electric Bolt Moltres if I want. But I don't think I'll need to. That 1,000 Arrows does so much damage. Yeah. No need to Dynamax. Actually, I'll do it anyway in case they Dynamax as a last-ditch move. Max Lightning, right. Okay, goodbye Moltres. Looks like they only challenged me to a best of 1. They might have missed the best of 3 rule. We'll try to get game 2 set up here. My opponent challenged me here, and I didn't look closely at the challenge code that they used. Okay, there's a challenge for game 2, I see. Let's make sure I have this replay. Okay. I kind of want to just do the same thing again. Now I know that the Grapploct can force Moltres out, but they haven't shown much of an answer to Tangela. Maybe they... or force Volcarona out. Maybe they bring Blaziken to this one. I'm surprised I didn't see Blaziken that game. It was the Pokemon I was most afraid of in the builder. Maybe I lead Zygarde this time then, so I can pressure the Blaziken immediately. I could do like Zygarde Volcarona. I think I like that. Offensive pressure instead of redirection. Still bring Tangela in the back. Maybe I leave the Regieleki behind this time, because I think they probably bring Pikachu to this game, right? I could bring Linoone. Let's do that. Okay, Moltres Pikachu lead. So Pikachu gets Fake Out. But it doesn't like having to deal with 1,000 Arrows. But Zygarde doesn't like having to deal with Fake Out. Nor Volcarona with G-Max Volt Crash. I'm going to go for a Quiver Dance. I might get punished for this. But I'm just going to quick Quiver Dance at 1,000 Arrows and we'll see what happens. I could actually Dynamax Zygarde and Max Quake into Pikachu. I don't need to worry that much about Pikachu though, I don't think. I didn't bring Aleki to this game. I'm just thinking if I Dynamax, they can't fake me out. but I don't think that's the best use of my Dynamax. They do fake out Zygarde. It actually does a fair bit of damage with that Light Ball boost. It's a nasty plot with Moltres. It's faster than Volcarona, but probably not anymore. Do I just Heat Wave and Thousand Arrows here? I'm down to give that a go. Knocks out Pikachu. Single target, 1,000 arrows, neutral damage, takes out Moltres. Nice. Grapple-locked and Lurantis again. I'm down to just Heat Wave, wipe out Lurantis and 1,000 arrows. If these both hit, I doubt Grapple-locked holds up against them either. They Dynamax the Lurantis. Okay, so it does survive the Heat Wave. It'll resist the 1,000 arrows. Grapple-locked actually takes that as well. They Octolock their own Lurantis, going for a defense boost, I guess. Yeah. I think that's going to be too little too late, but that's a cool attack. I'm going to go Linoon here. I'm going to Dynamax Volcarona, Max Flare into Lurantis. And I'm just going to go for a Belly Drum. Maybe they don't attack Linoon. I think it's worth a shot. I would definitely rather have Regieleki in this position, but... Okay, they Max Guard Lurantis. What does Grapple-locked do? Circle Throw into Volcarona. Nice. And yeah, you can't force out a Dynamax Pokemon with that. Honestly, I wasn't sure I remembered that correctly, but I think Max Flare and Extreme Speed should wrap this one up now. My opponent says GG's in the chat, so I think they agree. It is so weird playing with Dynamax again. I'm not used to it. Look at that. We got Linoon on the KO leaderboard already, week 1. And otherwise, this was a real team effort. Volcarona, Zygarde, Regieleki all putting in work. Tangela. I was going to say Tangela didn't get any KOs, but that's not true. It knocked out Gastrodon game 1, so Tangela as well. The only one I didn't bring to a game here was Blastoise. And I think the only one that didn't get any KOs. Alright. Fun start to the season, for sure. And stay tuned for the rest of week 1 later this week, and then, you know, all the other weeks after that. It's going to be an interesting time. I don't know if I gained any insight on whether I'm keeping Linoon, but we'll see.